Okay, Jeff York, welcome back to F.A.C.E. I'm going to make you the presenter now. Looking forward to seeing your pivots. I love the way you tie in all the different time frames. So welcome back to F.A.C.E., Jeff. Appreciate you being here on a holiday week.
Show my monitor. Can you hear me, Dale?
I can hear you, buddy.
Thank you for having me. I don't know which monitor you're seeing here. Can you see any?
Yeah, I see a bunch of different charts here. Looks like S&Ps are up the second one, and
So are you seeing 8 charts on my screen?
Correct.
Okay, good, great.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, great to have you, Jeff. You owe me a Coke.
Absolutely.
That's why I had you here. So anyway, I talked about in the promo tweet that I love the way you tie different time frames together with your pivots. And I heard an interesting statement by Carter Worth, who I think is very good, one of the few guys that turn the volume up on CNBC. And I wonder what you thought about it. He was talking about support, resistance, some people call it supply demand, some people call it pivots, that they're not made with concrete, that they're more like a mattress where you have to give it, that they move a little bit, they can give a little bit, that it's not really, that price point and that's it. If it gets through it by a few ticks or whatever, it's invalid. Do you feel the same way about your pivots?
Well, it depends on which pivot we're referring to. When it comes to yearly pivots, yeah, we have to give them a little bit of leeway because some of the charting services play funny games with the data, and sometimes they'll deduct the dividend from the price of the stock. The price of the stock normally drops when it goes ex-div anyways, but sometimes like Big Charts and some of those other companies, they'll deduct it twice. So the yearly pivots will be close, but they'll be a little bit off from charting platform to charting platform. When it comes to weekly pivots, yeah, they're more precise and more exact. But the thing that, I like Carter, and he's a good technician, but he's still, going the old school route that they teach using moving averages and drawing support and resistance lines. And in my view, we're in a computer age now. And computers really don't, know a moving average or a trend line, but they do know pivots. And the reason they know pivots is because pivots are just a math calc. They're based on the previous period's high plus low plus close divided by 3. So it's a simple math calc that a computer algorithm can identify easy, support and resistance levels. And I think that's one of the reasons pivot points work so well. That's
really an interesting point, Jeff. That the algos, they don't recognize channels.
Correct.
But they can recognize where liquidity and orders come in too. So these pivots are, where there are a lot of resting orders there, aren't there?
There's a lot of resting orders there, absolutely. And if price falls really fast or gaps up really fast, the algorithms know exactly where to hit it.
Okay. All right. So show us what you think is critical. I'd like to kind of start with Bitcoin because of what happened a week or so ago when we finally took out the January low. Looked like capitulation to me when we got under, I think it was 5,900, and then recovered back above it, then went back to it. So I'm interested in what your pivot work is saying. And how would you find pivots underneath it? You'd have to go back. Is there enough data to go back to find data underneath it? Okay, go ahead.
Can you see my Bitcoin BTCUSD chart? Excellent.
Got it. Yeah.
These long lines on the chart are the yearly pivot points, and these are based on Bitcoin's high-low close data from 2017. And all the different wallets have different data. Last December, we noticed that, between Coinbase and Bitfinex, at times there was a $2,000 or $3,000 spread. So, so, you know, what I'm basing these pivots on is the data that I'm getting from Bitfinex, and the data from Coinbase might be a little bit different. That's the problem that these cryptos have, is there's no centralized exchange to where you know, the datas are all coming from. But Bitcoin this year came down below the yearly pivots. This red line here is the YP. You can see it over here. We have 2 yearly pivots here, and that's been strong resistance so far this year. So I'm thinking that Bitcoin's not going to bottom until it gets down to these yearly pivots down here, either at $4,000 or $3,000. These are the new quarterly pivots you see on the side. So that's what my charts are showing. This, if I go to this quarterly pivot and edit it real quick and show you last quarter, the high last quarter was exactly right at the quarterly P right here.
Man.
So, and the high was right at the yearly P right here. So I'm still thinking that Bitcoin may go up to the quarterly pivot up here at 70, let's call it 7,400, before it starts working its way back down to 4,700, 4,000, or 3,000. But I don't think there's a...
Your pivots look like magnets to me, Jeff.
They are magnets, and it's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that we talk about at Pivotal Pivots, is the way that price is attracted to these pivots. It is like a magnet. It's amazing.
Okay, yeah, it's very. I mean, so you really, yeah, maybe a set of 5 numbers or so, depending upon your time frame, that you can just sit and wait for them before you take action, and you know them in advance, which you know is great for traders.
Exactly.
Because traders have to psychologically prepare themselves for a trade, and sometimes, and your best trades are things that you plan for, rather than analyze on the fly. Yeah, react, impulse trading.
Correct.
So interesting way to approach the market. So what do you have for us next?
So this is Bitcoin. We're looking at the yearly pivots give us a longer term view, okay?
Right.
I've never seen a major reversal on a commodity or a stock on a daily or weekly or monthly pivot. I've always seen the major biggest reversals at the yearly pivot. So I always like to start with the yearly view. And then if you want to go to a shorter term view, we can add the weekly pivots. The W stands for weekly, the M stands for monthly. So this week on Bitcoin, we're looking for support. It's opened the week above. This is that big spike we saw last Friday. So we're looking for support this week on the weekly P at 62.30, and we're looking for strong resistance this week at the confluence of these 2 pivots up here at 66.41 to 67.06.
Okay, and your weekly pivot there, W, is it 5.1 or S1 underneath it at 59.15? That was a low that we had a year ago, January, before we recovered.
Okay.
Isn't that, that's what it turned out to be. So that's also a weekly pivot.
That's going to be a coincidence, because this weekly pivot is actually made, or the data for this weekly pivot comes from last week's high-low close.
Okay. All right. So there's a lot of debate going on in the dollar. Euro is kind of the mirror image of the dollar. I'm real curious to see what you're showing there.
Okay. Euro dollar. I get a bad tick from Interactive Brokers here.
That's an omen. That's an omen tick, right?
But let me add another pivot point calculation to this, Camarias. But the pivot, the euro dollar to me is at strong support here.
Right.
The high this year was at the yearly R1 pivots up here back in January and February. And then it kind of meandered around for 3 or 4 months, and then it broke down and it fell down to the yearly pivot. So we're looking for strong support here on the euro dollar at $1.1477.
Okay.
That's the yearly P. That will complete this price pivot price pattern from the yearly R1 pivot back down to the yearly pivot. So we're looking for a good bounce back here, probably back up to $1.18 to $1.20. If price breaks below, closes below $1.17, then we're going to be looking in this $1.11, $1.10, $1.08 level. Okay. So this is key support for the euro dollar this year. A close below $1.1477 is going to open up a big can of worms below. But it could bounce back up to this this other pivot maybe later on in the year at $1.2146 if this $1.1477 level holds.
Okay, nice look, Jeff.
It looks a little bit better if I switch it over to a line chart. But
Yeah.
yeah, the yearly pivots are working great there. And we're also watching cable here too, because cable is also testing its yearly pivot. Let me go back to a candlestick chart here. And it's currently testing its yearly pivot. The high this year was at the yearly R1 pivots, and now it's pulled back to the yearly pivot. We've noticed that 80% of the time when price gets overbought or oversold at an R1 or an S1 pivot, it likes to come back to the P, the central pivot.
Okay, where's the central pivot on the pound? At 136.87?
130.49.
Oh, okay, that's a central pivot. Okay.
That's the central pivot right here. That's the YP, correct.
Okay, so if this is support does hold, where's the resistance pivot?
Well, we think it can go back up to this Fibonacci yearly R1 pivot up here at $1.3687.
Okay, so how does fib and pivots tie in together?
Well, these are not a Fibonacci retracement. This fib pivot is actually based on a Fibonacci either a 0.618 or a 0.38 fib, but it's actually a pivot point. It's not a retracement. There are 5 popular pivot point calculations. Floor traders use classic or traditional pivots. Institutional traders like to use Tom DeMark's pivots. We've got the brokers and banks that use Woody's pivots and the Camarilla pivots. And we've got the computer algorithms that like to use the Fibonacci pivots. So there are different classes of traders that use the different pivot calculations. That's why I have to use all the different calculations on my chart. And what we look for is a confluence of pivots. When we see 2 or 3 pivot point calculations close to each other, we know that that's going to be 2 or 3 times as strong of support or stronger resistance.
Love confluence, more than one reason coming together at the same level.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so nice view there. I think you have a couple more for us today.
Absolutely. Let's take
you know what? Let me be selfish.
Sure.
Let me see your pivots on the NASDAQ 100.
You got it.
Because I'm trading it. And, you know, I respect it. Did respect that pivot that you had earlier in few months ago, was coming in, what, around 6,900 or so. So, okay.
Right. We had the yearly R1 floor traders pivots up here at 7,069.84,
right.
and that presented strong resistance for the first several months of this year.
Right.
And then it came up to the Camarilla and Woody's yearly R1 pivots up here at 7,300, and now it's pulled back. So if the 6,900 level fails, then we're going to be looking for 68.46, possibly back down to 65.60. But what bothers me here, Dale, is the yearly pivots down here is still open. Price hasn't hit them yet. So
that's why, you know, that's a target I have.
Exactly. So this is also a target that we have, is the 6,000 level down here. That a lot of times when price gets oversold, overbought, it likes to come back down to that central pivot. The central pivot's down here at 59.35 on the NDX. So we think that there's a risk sometime this year, may not be this week or this month, maybe it's going to be September or October, that price may come back down and test this yearly pivot.
Okay, interesting. You know, I love it when a completely different method comes up with the same number I'm looking at from a method I use. So it actually, it builds conviction for it being at least a possibility. Not that it's inevitable, but it gives me a little bit more confidence with the number. And next,
let's do IWM.
Okay.
How about small caps?
Okay.
IWM came right up to the earlier this year, the yearly R1 pivot. Let me take this one off. We'll hide this one. The yearly R1 pivot calc and the Fibonacci R1 pivot calc was the high back in January, also the high back in March, and then we broke through it back in May, and we came right up to the yearly R2 pivot. So we're looking for a pullback now down here to 161. We're looking for a pullback from R2 back down to R1, and then possibly back up to 166. But this level here, this yearly R2 Fibonacci R3 pivots here at 170, 171 should be really strong resistance for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that was a nice exhaustion gap up there. How do your pivots handle the most volatile commodity being out there where Trump's tweeting to the Saudi should increase production. What's it saying to you about oil and energy prices, your work?
The oil loves the yearly pivots, but oil is, it's a futures contract. So we have the pivots on it can be a little bit tricky because we also have to look at
Because they change the premiums between different months, or
exactly,
Yeah.
because we're looking at the August contract now on oil, and let me switch over here. Come on, August.
There are CFDs on oil.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to eliminate the, whether or not you have a carrying charge market, or I forgot what the other one's called, where, it's a backwardation. Yeah, okay. Okay.
But oil this year came up back in January, right up to the yearly R1 pivot, had a big pullback.
Right.
Did it again back in back in March, and now it came up to the yearly R. This is a Fibonacci R3 pivot that I drew on here, but I think oil's probably going to go up to $78, $79. That's where we have the yearly R3 floor traders pivot. So we're looking for strong support down here at 69.19 on any pullback, and strong resistance up here at 78.80.
All right, nice look. Anything on to give some of the silver bulls some hope? Are we at some pivots add risk you have down here, it look like?
Well, let's see here. We're testing a yearly pivot here. Let me go back to the this contract. The July contract shows a little bit more. As we can see on the July contract, the yearly pivot was strong resistance up here at 1740. So we're looking for support down here at 1570. Is going to be the next area of possible support for silver.
And gold probably looks as bad, yeah.
And on gold, actually gold's testing, getting close here to a yearly pivot at 1243, 1242 is a weekly pivot. So we're thinking that this may be a good support zone here at 1242 on gold.
Okay, there's also, so that's a very important area. A lot of people looking at trend lines, but do you know what I'd say about trend lines, Jeff?
No, I don't. But I don't
their destiny is to be broken.
I agree. And I think Peter Brandt says the same thing too about trend lines.
All of us old guys do. Huh? So anyway, Jeff, now would be a good time to show your website, and unless you wanted to maybe show another instrument. But as you can see,
actually, what I want to do is teach you guys something here real quick. Yearly pivots are free, and many charting companies, charting services offer the pivots. So if we go to stockcharts.com, you can also get them on tradingview.com and everything. Oops, I misspelled that. I'm going to show you how to set up yearly pivots to where you can check them yourself.
Okay.
So if we go to stockcharts.com, this is just one of the services, free charting companies that I use. If we type in, let's say, Goldman Sachs, GS, brings you up a chart and an ad. Let's kill that ad. And if we go down here to the overlays, we can add in pivot points. Okay. And if we add that pivot points in, and if we update the chart, these pivot points that show up on the chart are the monthly pivot points when the chart's on a daily. If we change the chart to a weekly and hit update, it shows you the yearly pivot points.
Wow. And these are what kind of the different ones that you mentioned?
Actually, this company shows you 3 different ones. If you leave the pivot points here in the parameters box blank, they're the traditional pivots, floor traders pivots. If you add an F parameter, it shows you the Fibonacci pivots.
Wow.
And if you change that parameter from an F to a D, it shows you Tom DeMark's yearly pivots or monthly pivots, depending if you have it on a daily or a weekly chart.
What a pearl to share that with people. I bet a lot of people didn't know that. I didn't know that.
So so pivots are one of the great things about them is they're not proprietary, they're free, and many charting services offer them for free.
Okay. So then why do people come to you, Jeff? If they could get everything free?
Because they can.
The interpretation?
Exactly, to learn how to trade them, how to use them. Also, a lot of traders aren't quite sure which pivot calculations to use on which time of day. And also, I go through hundreds of scans a day, so I'm always looking for trade setups. And if they don't have the time to go through the scans and go through the trade setups, that's why they subscribe to
Okay, yeah, most people are lazy, aren't they? Thank God.
Yes, they are. Well, a lot of people work 2 jobs.
Yeah, I know that's true. But a lot of people just want the money just to pour into their account.
Exactly.
Without the work, right? I mean, I'd open one of those accounts. So there's your
Here's my
website.
pivotalpivots.com, and I also sell a webinar. Very inexpensive for $49. It's 3.5 hours. As soon as you buy it, it sends you a link to download it. You can watch it as many times as you want, and it teaches you everything you need to know about pivots. Which ones are the best ones to trade, how to trade them, where to find them, how to use them.
Jeff, you're one of the great guys in the business, and
thank you, Dale.
I can tell that you always have the people on your mind and want to serve them and help them. You plant good seeds, Jeff. So I hope that the cash rains down on you for the rest of the year, or until we talk again. And thank you so much for taking the time. Almost everyone's out of town except you and me. So thank you for sharing your views with us today, Jeff, and
thank you for
talking to you, my trading warrior brother.
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate it.
Okay, everyone, that's Jeff York, and you can find him on Twitter at pivotal_pivots, and go to his website for the tutorial on how to use his stuff. Ed Schaefer is thanking you, Dan Spangler, a lot of people thanking you, Jeff. Have a great day and a great holiday.
Thank you all.
Go ahead, and I'll see everyone for Turnaround Tuesday. Good hunting, and Jeff, this is how I end it all the time. Don't just count your pips, count your blessings, and I'll see everyone mañana. Take care, Jeff. Thank you, buddy. Adios.